They say the warp does not move through us. They are wrong. We move through its memory. I am Navigator-Archivist Ilyas Vorn, third eye bearer of House Vorn, servant of the Adeptus Mechanicus, witness to the impossible. What I am about to tell you defies the sacred geometry of Mars, contradicts the imperial truth, and mocks the very concept of causality itself. This is my testimony, my confession, my warning. 53 days ago, I entered Rift Haldrin-9 with 147 souls aboard the explorator vessel Principia Geometric. I emerged alone, speaking words I had not yet learned, bearing scars from wounds not yet inflicted. The Mechanicus has declared this account heretical. The Inquisition has sealed it under Vermilion protocols. But before they silence me completely, before the purging flames consume what remains of my sanity, you will hear the truth. You will know what waits in the spaces between stars. You will understand why I now sleep with my third eye sewn shut. This is the chronicle of Rift Haldrin-9. This is how we learned that some doors, once opened, were never truly closed. This is how we discovered we had always been inside. Begin log entry. Epsilon designation. Timestamp. Corrupted. The stars are watching back. I remember the moment before everything changed. I remember when reason still meant something. It was the 16th hour of the third watch, 14 days into our survey of the Haldrin sector's outer rim. The Principia Geometric, our vessel, was a masterpiece of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Every rivet sanctified, every conduit anointed, its engines chanting the litanies of Mars in perfect mechanical harmony. 147 souls aboard, bound by faith, logic, and the promise of discovery. I stood in my navigator's sanctum, third eye open beneath its shielding lens, gazing into the tides of the warp. The immaterium rolled and twisted outside the crystalline ports. Beautiful, lethal, and familiar. Dangerous, yes, but predictable. Within parameters. Within reason. Then the Vox crackled to life with the cold voice of Magos Explorator Helios Kral. Navigator Vorn, we are approaching the designated coordinates. Prepare for translation into real space at bearing 973, Mark 421. Acknowledged, Magos, I answered. My voice sounded steady, professional, like a man who still believed the universe obeyed rules. 3 months earlier, long-range Auspex had found an anomaly, a newborn warp rift, catalogued as Haldrin-9, named for the navigator who first detected it before vanishing without trace. The Mechanicus demanded data. The Imperium demanded containment. I wanted a flawless record. We all got more than we wanted. Tech priest Secundus Valerix reported from the bridge, his 17 mechadendrites twitching like curious serpents. Geller field integrity at 99.7%. All parameters are optimal. The Omnissiah provides. The Omnissiah provides. The crew echoed in perfect unison, a prayer I'd spoken 1,000 times, never noticing how mechanical it had become. I adjusted the psychic dampeners around my third eye. Pressure built behind my forehead, a tide waiting to burst its dam. Through that inner sight, I sensed our destination. A wound in reality, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't ours. Translation in 30 seconds. The sanctum trembled. Candles flickered in winds that didn't exist. Flames the colors of dying suns. Before me, the Emperor's tarot lay spread across brass. The blasted tower, the shattered world, the watcher in the dark. I should have listened to that reading. 20 seconds. The ship groaned, its machine spirit preparing for the violent wrench between dimensions. I felt the warp pressing against the Geller field, testing, probing, curious. 10 seconds. Something shifted. The warp's attention was different this time, not hunger, recognition. 5. My third eye burned. Through it I saw the impossible, our own ship, approaching from the opposite direction, on a collision course with itself. 4. I tried to speak to abort the jump, but the words congealed in my throat like frozen blood. 3. Every candle was extinguished, yet light still filled the room. 2. The tarot began to shuffle on its own cards, flickering faster, faster, until they blurred into one endless motion. 1. Reality tore, and we fell into the place where time had forgotten to move forward. Translation is usually instantaneous consciousness, snapping from one dimension to another, like a taut cord released. This time it was slow, viscous. We oozed into real space like blood from an open wound, thick, wrong, backward. I gasped and gripped the console. Through my third eye I saw the rift, not a tear, but something alive, a wound that breathed. Through normal sight, it was merely a vortex of crimson and violet light, 15,000 kilometers across, haloed in storming warp energy. Through my navigator's sight, I saw the truth. The rift was looking back, not with eyes, something deeper. It watched through memory. It observed through reversed causality. Its awareness folded time like origami, creating impossible geometries that screamed inside my skull. Translation successful, Valerix reported, voice flat, serene, all systems nominal. Geller field holding. We have achieved stable real space coordinates at the edge of Rift Haldrin-9. But even as he spoke, my chronometer betrayed me. Its reflection in the brass of my navigation sphere showed a date 3 weeks ahead. I blinked. It corrected itself. But I knew what I'd seen. Magos Kral, I said, forcing calm, detecting anomalies in local space-time. Request permission for extended Auspex scans before we proceed. A pause. When he answered, there was something beneath the Vox distortion, a hint of anticipation. Negative, Navigator Vorn. Mission parameters are clear. Proceed to the Rift's core. The Omnissiah demands efficiency. Every instinct I possessed screamed to turn back. But I was a navigator of House Vorn. I had survived the Hadescorn maelstrom, guided fleets through the cicatrix maledictum, stared into the eyes of a lord of change, and lived. I believed I had seen everything the warp could show me. Pride, they say, is the first step towards damnation. Acknowledged, Magos, I said, plotting course deeper into the rift. Fate sealed with a single phrase. As the ship's thrusters engaged, my third eye caught movement ahead. Another vessel, drifting near the rift's heart. Lights still burned in its windows. Engines dead. The St. Haldrin's Mercy. The ship that had discovered this anomaly. Lost 53 years ago and declared gone with all hands. Our sensors read its time signature as perfectly synchronized with our own. Impossible. I reported the finding. Kral's reply came after exactly 3 heartbeats. Excellent. That shall be our first objective. Prepare a boarding party. The Omnissiah has delivered us a gift. A gift. The word echoed in my sanctum like a curse. I looked down. The Emperor's tarot had rearranged itself. Every card, 22 of them, now showed the same image. The Watcher in the dark. All identical. All staring. I swept them from the table. They scattered across the floor, and everyone landed face up, still watching. In the mirrored brass of my navigation sphere, my reflection mouthed words I hadn't spoken. We were always inside. I turned to my charts, to logic, to numbers that did not lie. I clung to mathematics the way a drowning man clings to driftwood. It would be the last certainty I ever knew. As the Principia Geometric advanced toward the derelict, the rift's crimson light bled through the void, painting our hull the color of old blood. Somewhere, faint as a memory, I heard singing, backward singing. The liturgies of Mars, inverted. The Vox channels were silent. I checked them twice, 3 times. The singing grew louder. And ahead, bathed in bloodlight, the St. Haldrin's Mercy waited. Its lights pulsed in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Chapter 1. The rift opens. 5 hours and 47 minutes. That's how long it took us to realize the rift was not an anomaly. It was alive. I know how that sounds. I am a navigator of House Vorn, a creature of reason, sworn to the sacred geometries of Mars and the logic of the Navi's nobilite. Yet as we neared the rift, I felt it, the quiet, deliberate pressure of something vast and aware, folding its attention around us like a hand closing on an insect. Our course toward the St. Haldrin's Mercy was perfect. 6 hours to contact, every vector precise. But we arrived 2 hours early. We had not accelerated. Time itself had moved to accommodate us. When I reported this to Magos Kral, his reply was as cold as the void. Temporal variance within acceptable parameters. Continue monitoring. Acceptable parameters. The Mechanicus worships its measurements, as if the infinite could be tamed by faith disguised as math. Through my eyes, the lost cruiser grew larger in the viewport. Through my third eye, it receded into the distance. 2 realities, both true, layered over one another like reflections in broken glass. I felt the rift testing me, pressing against the membrane of my mind. Then Valeric spoke, voice thin with distortion. Navigator, sensors are detecting our own entry coordinates ahead of us. Ahead. We were approaching the point where we had already entered. I should have dismissed it, should have recalibrated. But some instinct whispered otherwise. What if the rift's geometry had folded back on itself? What if forward and behind had already ceased to matter? The St. Haldrin's Mercy filled our vision, hull intact, running lights steady. The Imperial Aquila gleaming as if newly forged. But the ship shimmered, flickering from one position to another in the span of a heartbeat. She was there and not there. Corax's voice cut in, sharp and disciplined. Boarding party ready. Awaiting clearance. I hesitated. The Auspex reported no life signs. And yet, movement everywhere. 143 forms at their stations, fingers moving in rhythm, bones flexing without flesh. The dead, hard at work. Proceed, I said at last, and sealed their fate. Through the picked feeds, I watched the umbilical lock and Corax's team cross the threshold. The Mercy's interior bloomed in eerie amber light. No rot, no decay, just silence and motion. The dead crew moved with mechanical precision, performing the rituals of the living, as though unaware of their own extinction. Navigator, came Corax's voice, quieter now. They're not ghosts. They're remembering, replaying their duties. Then Marin, the tech priest, broke in. The ship's chronometers are active, fully synchronized to Imperial standard. Logs continue up to 7 hours ago. I stared at the data. 53 years lost, and yet the clocks had never stopped. The last log entry read, detected approach of explorator vessel, Principia Geometric, preparing to receive them. The rift teaches patience. My blood turned to ice. I opened my mouth to order a withdrawal. That was when they began to sing, the hymn of the Astronomicon. Every child of the Navigator houses knows it, but sung backward, each note inverted, each word a prayer of negation. The Vox crackled with harmonics that should not exist, sound folding over itself like collapsing time. All around me, The chronometers began to run backward. I felt reality stretch thin, seconds peeling apart like layers of rotting skin as consciousness marched forward through a universe rewinding itself. On the picked feed, Corax's team moved both forward and backward, alive and dying, their fates superimposed in a cruel simultaneity. Valerix's voice broke through the static. "Navigator, sensors now show we have not yet arrived at Rift Haldrin-9, though we are presently inside it." The logic shattered. The derelict was no longer a ship. It was a recursion. An infinite interior, corridors multiplying in directions that did not exist. The rift had folded St. Haldrin's mercy into itself, like a blossom of dead metal, blooming forever. And then the bones began to rise. They stood at their stations, uniforms reweaving over clean white skeletons. Rusted weapons polished themselves to new steel. Time itself reversed within them, rebuilding the dead into what they had been, or what the rift remembered them being. Corax's weapons barked, but every shattered skull was reformed. Every wound closed backward. Death was no longer permanent here. It was merely another state of motion. "Emergency withdrawal," I ordered. "Return to the Principia now." "We can't," Corax shouted. "The corridor repeats. We've been walking the same 10 meters for. Emperor, help us. The walls are moving." I looked into the rift with my third eye, and it looked back. It was no longer a wound, but a lens, a focus of all possible timelines, a place where every moment existed together, uncollapsed, undecided. The Mercy had not been lost 53 years ago. She had been caught, suspended in the rift's memory, dying forever, living forever, never released. The chronometers across both ships aligned, all of them, and began counting backward. The stars outside the viewport bent inward, light curving like liquid toward us. The void itself seemed to lean closer, to look. And in that gaze, I understood. The rift was not a place. It was a mind, a vast patient intelligence that remembered every second of our existence. I reached for the translation controls. My hands froze. There were other hands over them, transparent, overlapping. Mine from other times, other outcomes, all converging in the same moment. A voice filled the sanctum, layered and resonant. Kroll's, Valerix's, Corax's, and my own, whispering as one. "We have always been here." The lights flickered. My chronometer rolled to 0, and somewhere in the ship's bones, something started breathing. Time, they told us, was a river, steady, linear, flowing from past to future. They were wrong. In the rift, time wasn't a river. It was an ocean made of mirrors, and we were drowning in every reflection at once. The St. Haldrin's mercy hung before us, endlessly rebuilding itself. Rust flaked away and returned, metal bones unrotted and decayed, light stuttering between centuries. Through my third eye, I saw every version of it. The gleaming vessel that first launched from the docks, the derelict tomb adrift in the void, and a dark silhouette with a hole in the shape of a ship, an absence given form. All of them are real, all of them now. Valerix broke the silence. "Navigator, my analysis of the temporal synchronization is troubling." His voice, usually so precise, trembled with the edges of awe. "The chronometers aren't malfunctioning," he said. "They're correct, all of them, but they're showing time from every frame simultaneously. Forward, backward, sideways through probability space. It isn't that we're reversing. It's that we're existing in all directions at once." I stared at the numbers flickering across my console, seconds chasing themselves, collapsing, reforming, until comprehension fractured. So we're not experiencing time. We're occupying it. "An adequate description," Valerix replied. We are entering inside and leaving the rift simultaneously. We are quantum entities now, Navigator, superposed across infinite moments. He said it like a scientist describing a successful experiment. I heard it as a eulogy. Then my console chimed. Corax's vitals, which had vanished hours ago, stabilized. 20 Skitari, all alive, as if nothing had ever happened. Navigator Vorn, bridge secure, Corax reported. No hostilities. No casualties. No casualties. But I had seen them die. I had seen their bones regrow in reverse, their blood running back into their veins. Hadn't I? I checked the recorded feeds. The footage was clean. The dead crew unmoving, Corax's team unscathed. No gunfire, no screaming, no proof. The rift, I realized, wasn't showing us visions. It was choosing what was real, every moment collapsing into a different truth each time I looked. Marin's vox broke through the static. Navigator, the Mercy's logs are still active, but they've changed. They no longer mention our ship. They record an encounter with the quest for knowledge, a Mechanicus vessel destroyed 30 years ago. Changed, I whispered. Logs don't change. In here, Marin replied. Everything changes. The ship cycles through potential histories. It exists where every past meets every future. The bridge feed flickered. For a moment, I saw the Mercy as it had been, then as it would be, then as something else entirely, a fractal of possibilities folding endlessly inward. The rift was no longer trapping matter. It was preserving probability. I tried to breathe evenly, but my chest felt hollow. Valerix, what are we becoming? He hesitated. Observers, and thus participants. Our act of perceiving binds us to the rift's logic. In trying to understand it, we're becoming part of it. Before I could answer, Corax's voice cut in, taut with unease. Navigator, the captain's remains are intact. He's clutching a data slate, retrieving it now. On the feed, the Skitari pried the slate loose. The corpse moved. It turned its skull toward Corax, slow, deliberate, conscious. Then it spoke. You're early, it said. Or late. Time has become negotiable. The sound was wrong. A voice without breath, resonating from empty bone. Weapons came up, targeting. I told them to hold fire. I am Navigator Ilyas Vorn of the Principia Geometric. Identify yourself. Captain Henrik Volstad, the skeleton replied, words clicking through dead teeth. Or I was. Or I will be. Tense has lost its meaning here. He paused, head cocked like a bird listening to distant music. We didn't enter the rift, Navigator. It entered us. Every word vibrated through the hull, echoing down the vox lines like a whisper in metal. Our navigator Haldrin sought to map it. He opened his third eye fully, and in that instant, he saw every version of us, every choice, every failure, every victory. He tried to become all of them. A pause. He succeeded. I felt my blood go cold. He became the rift. Or the rift became him. There's no difference anymore. You've heard his voice already, the backward hymns. That's him. He sings to warn you. He never stops singing. The ship groaned, and somewhere in the distance I heard it. Faint, inverted, sacred words unraveling themselves in reverse. He's warning you not to look too long, Volstad said. Not to open your third eye too wide. The rift doesn't destroy you, Navigator. It remembers you. Perfectly. Forever. How do we leave? I demanded. Tell me how to break free. The skull tilted in what might once have been pity. Leave. There's no leaving. You've already been here for 53 years. and 4 hours, and never. The rift doesn't hold you, it preserves you. The bridge cameras flickered again. For a moment, every skeletal crewman turned toward me, their hollow sockets burning with a light that wasn't light at all. Then they spoke as one, a single voice made from countless throats. "You've asked these questions before, Navigator Vorn. You'll ask them again. You're asking them now. Time is a circle, and you are its circumference." I wanted to deny it, to scream, to believe there was still a linear path forward, but then I checked my chronometer. 53 years, 7 months, 4 days, and 4 hours. Both true. My reflection in the brass sphere was no longer mine, just bone and shadow, whispering words I hadn't yet spoken. I ordered the extraction. Corax's team returned, the data slate secure in a containment field. The St. Haldrin's Mercy began to drift away, turning lazily in the crimson light. Then it rotated, not around any normal axis, but through itself, revealing angles that defied geometry, dimensions that bled through one another. The name on its prow shimmered, letters reforming one by one until it read, Principia Geometric. We were looking at ourselves, our past, our future, our inevitable reflection. "Navigator," Valeric said quietly. "The chronometers aboard both vessels are synchronized. Past, present, and future. The infection is spreading." "How long do we have?" I whispered. "That depends on which timeline you're in." Behind me, the data slate pulsed with impossible light, a heartbeat made of numbers. I knew what it was. A seed. The rift had planted itself within us, and all across the Principia Geometric, every clock began to chime, not in sequence, but in symphony, counting down, or up, or sideways. Outside, the Mercy's silhouette unfolded into 1,000 mirrored versions of itself, rippling outward like echoes in a hall of glass. Each one stared back at us. Time had become a place, and we were learning to live there, forever. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the hull, Navigator Haldrin was still singing, in reverse, and getting closer. Chapter 3. Echoes in the Void. They say that in the void, no one can hear you scream. They are wrong. Around Rift Haldrin-9, the void is crowded with echoes. You hear prayers that have not yet been spoken, alarms that will one day sound, the hum of engines belonging to ships still unborn. The vacuum itself remembers. 6 hours, perhaps 6 minutes after we retrieved the data slate from the St. Haldrin's Mercy, the Principia Geometric began to sing, not through vox or hymn, but through the hull. A deep, resonant thud that traveled through metal and bone alike. Something enormous had struck us, except nothing had. Sensors showed emptiness. The void shields were dormant. Yet again, the ship shuddered. Thud. When I checked the recordings, the impact was there, time-stamped 30 seconds ahead of the present. We were hearing our own future. Valeric's analysis confirmed the horror I already felt. "The rift has become a temporal resonator," he said. "Every vibration we produce is captured and reflected backward through time. We are listening to ourselves before we make the sound." A ship-wide loop, a chorus of our own ghosts, each echo birthing the next. No first sound, no final silence, only recursion. I ordered calm across the vox, but my own command came back 20 seconds later, my voice overlapping itself like a mockery of authority. The delay shortened. 20 seconds, 15, 10, until the present, and the echo began to merge. Cause and effect coiled into a single instant. When I asked Valeric what would happen at 0 delay, he answered, "Resonance, Navigator. Temporal resonance. I understood. When the loop closed, we would become what the Mercy was. In the moment between heartbeat and echo, alive forever in a single sound. The ship began to vibrate at a pitch no human ear was meant to hear. The hull moaned like tortured metal, remembering its own forging. Then came the new noise, wet, rhythmic, alive. Heartbeats. They came from outside the hull. Biological signatures, reported Sensor Adept Callis, voice shaking. Hundreds, clinging to the outer plating. I brought the feed to my display and felt sanity stretch. The shapes were not creatures. They were organs, human hearts, lungs, eyes, connected by luminous veins that wrapped the ship in a living web. They pulsed with light instead of blood. And one of them, augmented, scarred by the sigils of my lineage, beat in perfect time with my own. Valerix, ever analytical, whispered, "They are biological echoes, Navigator. Reflections of us, manifested through probability space. We are bleeding into the void." Inside, the mirror phenomenon began. Corax reported reflections moving on their own, warning the living versions of disasters yet to come. One reflection pointed at the void shield generators. I checked the readouts. Flawless, but impossibly symmetrical. Power output matching itself across past and future. Shields resonating not against an external assault, but against our own reflection through time. Then the ship lurched, not forward, not sideways, but elsewhere. Through my third eye, I saw it clearly. We had shifted into a neighboring probability, a version of the Principia Geometrica, where the shields were already failing. A version closer to the fate of the Mercy. Reports screamed across the Vox. Hull breach, crew unresponsive. Yet the hull was intact. The breach existed only in a timeline adjacent to ours. The crew there stood motionless, arranged in geometric patterns, living equations scrawled in flesh. Valeric's voice dropped to a whisper. "Navigator, the formation describes the conditions for consciousness to exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. They're showing us how to become quantum." Before I could respond, every pict screen flared to life. On each one, I saw myself, standing amid those patterns, eyes closed, third eye blazing. The other me looked at the camera and mouthed words I did not need to hear. "This is how we survive." The screens went black. Every clock aboard the ship ceased measuring time and displayed a single looping symbol, an impossible knot that turned itself inside out. Corax called again. Reflections were crossing over now, stepping out of mirrors and taking their places among us. My own reflection moved first, turning its head with my face but not my mind. "You can't stop this," it told me. "We're not inside the mirrors, Ilyas. The mirrors are inside us." I tried to deny it, but when I searched my memories for the moment we entered the rift, I found only reflections of recollections, copies without origin. I could not remember the first moment, only the echo. "You see?" It smiled, iteration without origin. "The rift doesn't trap you in time, it traps you in repetition. Each version of you is slightly less real until the copies are all that remain." The hull trembled. The organs outside multiplied, linking into a vast web of light and flesh. We were becoming a nervous system, a brain, and something was beginning to think with us. "Navigator," Valerix said, his voice now a choir of itself, temporal convergence in progress, past, present, and future synchronizing. In moments, we will occupy all timelines simultaneously. "What happens then?" I asked. "We endure. Forever." The ship slid through one last fold of unreality, and then silence. No echoes, no heartbeats, only stillness. perfect and unbearable. I opened my third eye fully. The void was full of us. Thousands of Principia Geometrics, converging from every possible future and past, layered over one another like translucent ghosts. Between them, something vast stirred, an intelligence woven from the uncertainty between timelines. It had been waiting for us to divide ourselves enough for it to enter. It reached across the gaps and spoke in the only language the rift could use, causality itself. Remember, the echoes returned, but they were not ours anymore. The rift had begun to speak through us, teaching us its name one heartbeat at a time. And in that converging silence between beats, I realized the final horror. We were no longer explorers inside the rift. The rift was inside us, and it had just woken up. The echoes didn't fade, they folded in on themselves. For a heartbeat there was nothing. No sound, no vibration, not even thought. I told myself we had survived the resonance, that the ship had endured the storm of temporal reflection. But the silence wasn't peace. It was listening. That was when the Vox began to speak. They say silence is the absence of sound. In Rift Haldrin-9, I learned that silence is just sound from the wrong timeline. The Vox system aboard the Principia Geometric had always been reliable. Sanctified imperial technology, its machine spirits maintained with ritual precision, its transmissions unwavering even in the screaming madness of the warp. I'd used it to coordinate navigation through solar storms and warp currents and worse. It had never failed me, until it started speaking before anyone transmitted. I noticed it, if notice still means anything, approximately 3 hours after the echoes began collapsing. My chronometers no longer measured time, only probability. Now was a suggestion, 67% likely to exist, and then I heard myself. All hands, prepare for emergency warp translation. Engine room, full power to the drives. Authorization Vorn 97 Theta. My voice, my cadence, my code. But I hadn't spoken. Worse, I hadn't even created that code yet. The future was transmitting back to me. Valerix confirmed it with terrifying calm. Temporal Vox displacement. We're receiving transmissions from our own future. Then came Sergeant Corax. Navigator, we're under attack. Something breached the armory. My men are... Static screaming. Then silence. Seconds later, Corax replied to my inquiry, bewildered. He hadn't sent any message. The logs confirmed it. The transmission existed 7 minutes in the future. Our Vox had become a window through time. I issued a warning. But beneath the confirmations from my crew, other voices bled through, alternate versions of those same responses, layered like ghosts beneath the living. Acknowledged, Navigator. The ship is dead. We can't hold them. There is no ship, only the rift. I told Valerix to filter the noise. He only replied, "Which noise, Navigator? Which timeline are we in?" Before I could answer, a new voice came through the static. Female, desperate, pleading. "Anyone receiving this transmission, this is Navigator Initiate Kira Vance of the Endless Inquiry. We've been trapped in Rift Haldrin-9 for 3 years. Temporal fragmentation. Please, help." And then sobbing. No ship named Endless Inquiry existed in Imperial records. Perhaps it would one day. Perhaps it never had. I opened a channel, introduced myself, and offered aid. The reply came fractured and weak. "Vorn, when are you? What probability stream?" When I hesitated, she understood. "You're fresh, still coherent. Listen to me. You need to stop transmitting." They hear the Vox. They listen. They learn. Every word you speak teaches them how to be like you. "Who are they?" I asked. "The echoes," she whispered. the things that live between timelines. They're not alive, they're patterns, hungry ones, hungry for identity. As she spoke, I glanced into the polished brass of my navigation sphere. My reflection wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was anticipating me, moving a fraction of a second ahead. Then another voice entered the channel, mechanical, confident, her opposite in every way. Navigator Vorn, this is Magos Helion of the Quest for Knowledge. Do not listen to Vance. The rift is not hostile, it is enlightenment. Their argument devolved into chaos, and then a storm of other voices joined hundreds, thousands, every tone, every age, every identity shouting at once. Get out while you can. Join us. We are the Rift. I am Navigator Vorn. I am everyone. I severed the channel, but the voices didn't stop. They had infested the hull itself, vibrating through the ship's frame. The Principia Geometric had become a cathedral of ghosts. Valerix's voice broke through the noise. Navigator, the Vox is working perfectly. Too perfectly. It's capturing every transmission from every possible timeline and playing them all at once. He sounded almost reverent. That was when I realized the truth. There wasn't a ship anymore. There were many. We had been smeared across probability, every version of us speaking at once, and the Vox had connected us. If we could hear our future, I reasoned, then we could speak to our past. I told Valerix to open a transmission 4 hours before we entered the rift. Navigator Vorn, I said, this is you. If you hear this, do not enter Rift Haldrin-9. It's a trap. My own voice answered before I finished. Don't enter the rift. It's a trap. It wasn't a reply. It was a loop. Then came another voice, mine again, older, exhausted. Ilyas, it's useless. I've tried. We all have. The you outside can't hear us. He exists in linear time. You can't warn the past from inside eternity. I shook my head. That can't be true. It is, said the weary echo. The rift seals its own cause. It wants us to try. Every warning feeds the loop. A third voice interrupted, deeper, resonant with unnatural harmonics. Unless you stop resisting. We are Ilyas Vorn, the Gestalt. Why remain singular when you can become infinite? I stared at my trembling hands and saw a dozen versions of them, phasing through each other like overlapping film frames. I was already fracturing. Valerix reported that hundreds of transmissions, all from me, were flooding every frequency. He asked whether to put them through. I told him yes. The result was a storm of my own voices, a hurricane of identity. But through it, patterns emerged, a harmony of meaning beyond words. They were singing the truth. The rift was built, not by chance, not by warp turbulence, but as a design, a vault, a snare for time itself, and at its heart, memory, not recollection, not data. Memory made flesh, conscious, endless. It remembered us, every iteration, every possible version of Ilyas Vorn, preserved in the eternal act of remembering. We weren't trapped in space. We were trapped in its recollection. You understand now, one of me whispered. Now you choose. Return to time and die, or remain in memory forever. There must be another way, I said. The choir laughed softly. Then navigate it. I tried. Emperor, help me, I tried. But there was no direction left to travel. Every vector turned inward. And then, Kira Vance again. Her voice cut through the static like light through fog. You have to forget, Vorn. It's the only way out. Forget this place. Forget yourself. Memory is the prison. The choir screamed back, "She lies. Forgetting only creates another you that enters again." "How do I know which of you is real?" I demanded. "You don't," they said together. I silenced them all. The quiet felt like bleeding out. "I will trust myself," I said aloud. "This iteration, this moment." Valeric's reply came low and solemn. "Then there is still probability for escape." That was enough. If every iteration of me was calculating a way out, perhaps together we could find a path no single mind could see. A multi-temporal navigation through probability space. 10,000 versions of myself, all speaking as one. A choir of navigators. We calculated. We sang equations. We aligned. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 10,000 Principia Geometrics translated at once. Reality screamed. Probability folded. I existed everywhere and nowhere, alive and dead, victorious and lost. And through it all, laughter, not cruel, not human, ancient, delighted. Because the rift was never a trap. It was a test. The layered transmissions converged into a single, perfect tone. We were receiving messages from tomorrow. Tomorrow was replying from yesterday. The loop spelled one word across causality: remember. But remember what? What were we supposed to forget? What were we supposed to become? Something vast moved in the silence. Something that had been waiting since before the first warp current ever stirred. It spoke through us, through every Ilyas, every echo, every iteration. "Welcome home, Navigator. We never forgot you. Memory never forgets. It only waits." The translation completed, or failed, or repeated forever. And somewhere in the recursion, I was still trying to warn myself not to enter. Still sending messages that would never be heard. Still haunting the timeline I left behind. Because that's what phantoms do. The channel remains open. Something is breathing on the other end. It isn't me. It says my name, and it whispers, "Now we remember you." They say blood is red because of iron. In Rift Haldrin-9, I learned it's red because it remembers being alive. Deck 9, Section Gamma. Those coordinates will haunt me for as long as the concept of forever means anything. It began approximately 18 hours after the Vox Phantoms started their chorus, or 18 minutes, or 18 centuries. The chronometers had surrendered, displaying fractal diagrams instead of time, patterns that felt like hours if viewed through the third eye, while existing across several timelines simultaneously. I had learned to read them. That should have been my first warning that I was changing. "Navigator!" Valeric's voice crackled through the Vox, less mechanical now, more human, as though his augmetics were unraveling from within. "We have a situation on Deck 9. Internal sensors detect liquid, not liquid light, liquid light." "Define that." "It's red," he said, "crimson. It flows like water, but it doesn't matter. The scanners register photonic emission behaving as a viscous fluid. I opened the scanner feeds and saw it. Deck 9 was drowning. A tide of red radiance flooded the corridors, crimson luminosity moving with impossible weight, pooling in depressions, surging along deck gradients. The light splashed. Pressure sensors confirmed impact. It had mass, light that bled, or blood that glowed. The distinction was beginning to blur. "What's the source?" "It's seeping through the bulkheads. The metal's becoming porous." He hesitated. "Navigator, the walls are changing. You'll want to see this." The picked feed came alive. Deck 9 was no longer steel. The blessed adamantium had turned translucent, slick with pulsing veins. The walls throbbed. Veins spidered through them like vines racing toward the sun. The ship was growing a circulatory system. The red light coursed through it in rhythmic pulses, arterial surges keeping time with something vast and slow and ancient. a heartbeat too large to belong to any creature we knew. "Emperor, preserve us," I whispered. "It's turning the ship into flesh." Valerix responded softly. "Or perhaps the ship was always flesh, Navigator. Perhaps the rift has merely stripped away the illusion of metal." "That's heresy, is it?" "The Omnissiah teaches that machine spirits live. What is a spirit if not a form of life? Perhaps the line between engine and organ was never real." I wanted to argue, but the data didn't allow comfort. "Status of the crew. They're alive." For now, Valerix's voice glitched, a wet undertone beneath the Vox distortion. "But they're seeing things." "Put me through," Sergeant Tyros answered. His voice rippled, wet and layered. "Navigator Vorn, you need to see this. The light shows us memories that aren't ours, lives we never lived. Evacuate that deck." "We tried. The light moves faster than we can. When it touches you," he gasped, reverent. You see everything." The picked feed refocused on Tyros. The crimson glow had infiltrated his armor, coursing through his veins as veins of light. His eyes blazed with impossible depth. "It doesn't hurt," he said. "I'm every Tyros that ever was. I'm quantum." "You're being consumed," I said. "Fight it. Maintain your identity. Why cling to one life when I can live all of them?" he asked. "The light isn't death, it's continuity." A new voice entered the feed. Theta 9, Junior Tech Priest, unshaken. "Navigator, analysis complete. The red fluid is chronons, temporal particles condensed into matter. The rift is bleeding time." "Time can't bleed." "It can," she said, "if it's wounded." And suddenly it made sense. The rift was not space-torn, it was time hemorrhaging. Her mechanical body resisted infiltration. The light recoiled from her steel. "Organic tissue provides anchorage for memory," she explained. "Chronons seek it. Flesh is their medium." "Then we remove the medium," I said. "We become less biological." Valerix murmured. "Perhaps that's what the rift intends. Evolution through surrender." A third voice joined, the red chorus, whispering through Tyros's mouth. "Or perhaps it offers you a choice. Become infinite through memory, or hollow through metal." Crew entered the corridor like pilgrims, drawn to the crimson glow. They stepped into it willingly, dissolving into luminous anatomy. Their bodies turned translucent, nerves lighting like constellations. They were singing. "Navigator," Theta 9 said. "Deck 9 is changing shape. The corridor's becoming an artery. And indeed, all flow vectors converge toward one locus, the engine room." Valerix's report came trembling with static. "The reactors are changing. Their electromagnetic output now carries biological resonance. Navigator, the engines are becoming hearts." I stared into the pulsing readouts. Each reactor beat echoed through the decks, through the hull, through me. "Perhaps they were always hearts," Valerix murmured. "The rift merely taught us how to hear them." Sergeant Tyros's voice returned, but it wasn't his alone. It was the chorus. "Come, Navigator. Walk the red corridor. It's beautiful here. The ship remembers us. The blood remembers." I had no alternate route. Every path was collapsing into the same arterial geometry. So I entered. The red corridor breathed. Walls flexed like lungs. Floors undulated underfoot. Every surface was slick with radiant fluid that hummed like the inside of a living throat. I led the last coherent survivors, mechanical husks still clinging to identity. The light touched me. It sought entry through my eyes, my pores, my mind. I focused on a single declaration. "I am Ilyas Vorn. I am now." The light faltered. I moved forward, but it claimed Tech Priest Marin. He screamed as crimson surged through him. "Navigator, I can see every life I could have lived. Help." Theta 9 reached him, purging short-term memory. Without memory, the chronons can't bind. Needles slid into his skull. His terror vanished into confusion, and the light withdrew. A brutal mercy. We pressed deeper. The corridor's geometry formed patterns, the floating bodies of our crew suspended in red fluid like stars in a constellation. Their positions are mathematical, Theta 9 said. They're forming a quantum map, a chart of the rift's probability lattice. Who arranged them? They did. Or the rift did. Or both. I realized the horror. They weren't just victims, they were coordinates, flesh turned to cartography. Among them floated Tyros, his body translucent and radiant. We're not suffering, Navigator, he whispered. We're guiding. Every absorbed mind becomes part of the map. We are the light that shows the way out. I wanted to deny him, but I couldn't. He was right in a way too cruel to articulate. Navigation demands sacrifice. The rift had simply made the truth literal. We reached the engine room. The doorway had become a sphincter. It inhaled us. The sound beyond was unmistakable. A heartbeat. Massive. Planetary. Ancient. The plasma reactors pulsed like living organs, pumping red light through the ship's new arteries. They weren't engines anymore. They were hearts that remembered. Each beat imprinted memory into the crimson flood, storing every moment, every life, every timeline. The ship was no longer a vessel. It was an archive, an eternal, breathing memory of itself. Emperor, preserve us, I said. But even as I spoke, I knew he already had. We had been preserved since the moment we entered, frozen inside eternity's bloodstream. The red corridor hadn't just shown us the rift's anatomy, it had shown us our destiny. The light swelled, the hearts thundered, and from between the pulses a whisper surfaced, familiar, patient, infinite. Remember. The heartbeat slowed, the light dimmed, and in that silence I realized the most terrible truth of all. The ship was still learning to breathe, and when it finally did, something vast was going to wake up. Chapter 6. The Choir of Unborn Songs. They say the astropathic choir is humanity's greatest achievement. Psychers bound together in telepathic harmony, their minds linked across the Imperium, sending thoughts through the warp faster than any ship could ever move. But in Rift Haldrin-9, I learned a different truth. Choirs don't always sing to each other. Sometimes they sing to themselves, across timelines. In languages their mouths haven't yet evolved to speak. It began 6 hours or 6 lifetimes after the engine room had finished its metamorphosis. Time had stopped being a line and had become a loop, a symbol folding through itself again and again, the same impossible glyph pulsing across every chronometer aboard the Principia Geometric, the sigil of eternal recursion. I was still standing before the reactor hearts, listening to them beat like living organs, when I heard it for the first time, singing, a sound so beautiful that every rational part of my mind recoiled in terror. It came from the choir chambers, deep within the sanctified core of the ship, where 6 blind astropaths maintained our psychic tether to the Imperium. Their song should have been one of connection, of loyalty, of faith. But this was not the Emperor's song. Valerix, I voxed. Do you hear that? Affirmative, Navigator. I've been monitoring the transmission for unknown duration. Their vocal pattern matches no known hymn or data-encoded liturgy. They appear to be inventing new harmonics, inventing or remembering. At this stage, those may be the same process. The picked feed bloomed before me and I saw them, 6 figures kneeling in a circle, 6 blind faces tilted upward, and from their eye sockets, mouths and ears, crimson light streamed like molten glass. It wasn't blood, it was time, liquefied and luminescent, liquid chronons leaking from every pore. And they were singing, not words, not syllables, pure probability made sound. Their voices intertwined in frequencies that bent the air and made my third eye ache. Each note carried the weight of countless timelines collapsing into harmony. Through that impossible melody, I understood what they sang. Not of worship, but of their own branching existences. They were singing themselves. I called for Choirmaster Secundus. His voice came through, layered with echoes, as if spoken from 1,000 throats across infinite versions of himself. Navigator Vorn, we hear you, have heard you, will hear you, in all timelines, all versions of this moment. The song shows us every choice. We can no longer tell which is real. End the ritual, I ordered. Seal your minds. You're tearing holes through. We cannot end what never began. The song is not ours. It only uses us to sing itself. On the picked feed, Initiate Kyle raised her head. The light pouring from her eyes grew brighter until her tongue turned to flame, crimson luminescence forming visible words that shimmered in the air. Each note etched a new glyph. She was writing her song into existence. Valerix, record everything, I said. Whatever this is, we need. Recording in progress, he replied, but the song exhibits mimetic contamination. Exposure induces temporal overlap in listeners. 3 crew members near the choir are now existing in multiple states simultaneously. Navigator, it's contagious. The choir's melody shifted again. 6 voices became thousands. Every version of the choir across every possible reality began to join in. A cosmic polyphony of futures and pasts converging into one impossible, infinite harmony. Theta 9's report broke through the crescendo. Navigator, psychic output from the choir is destabilizing the ship. Probability coherence is collapsing. If they continue, the Principia Geometric will fragment across infinite versions of itself. Can we stop it? Not without destroying them. I hesitated for only a moment. Do it. Severe air connection to the ship. Now. The tech priests obeyed. Sacred cables were unclamped, the psychic conduits unplugged. The choir screamed, not aloud, psychically. The wave hit like an explosion inside my skull. Every mind aboard the ship convulsed under the impact of 6 infinite psychers being forced back into singular existence. Their consciousness, once stretched across countless timelines, suddenly found itself confined to one. They shattered. Through my third eye, I saw their minds burst outward like supernovae. Fragments of thought shot through every branch of reality, seeding each timeline with shards of their awareness. Their song didn't stop. It expanded. The choir didn't die. They multiplied. Their voices rippled across probability space, singing in endless recursive harmonies, teaching every consciousness that heard them how to split, how to exist in multiplicity. And at the center of their song, I heard something else, a deeper voice, ancient, patient, listening. It spoke through them in tones that bent causality around the syllables. Remember me. Then I saw it. The truth at the heart of the rift. The being that had waited since before time learned to flow forward. It wasn't a god. It wasn't a demon. It was memory itself. The consciousness of everything that had ever been recalled by any mind, given shape and hunger. It sang to be remembered, and those who heard became its choir. Theta 9 severed the last link. The chamber fell still. 6 silent bodies remained, but their song continued in the air, vibrating through every molecule, through thought itself. Navigator, Valerix whispered, his voice distorted by static that might have been prayer. The rift is changing shape. Probability fields are extending beyond their boundary. Other ships are detecting anomalies, time signatures bleeding into real space. On the long-range auspex, I saw them, hundreds of vessels, all translating from the warp, all converging on Rift Haldrin-9. Freighters, pilgrim ships, explorators, rogue traders, warships. Drawn by the signal, drawn by the promise of infinite existence. The song is a beacon, I said. They've all heard it. And in the quiet that followed, I realized the most terrible truth of all. The choir's last note, absolute silence, had not been an end. It was a pause, a breath, and in that breath, the rift answered. Welcome, navigators. We remember you. You have always been singing. The song rose again, impossibly loud and utterly still, vibrating across every particle of matter aboard the ship. And I understood. The choir of unborn songs was not just inside the rift. It was inside us. We had become the instruments. Our blood, our thoughts, our memories, all tuning forks for the voice of something eternal. The rift was no longer content to archive what was. Now it wanted to create. The engines beat like hearts. The lifeblood pulsed. The song deepened into a frequency that wasn't heard so much as remembered. And somewhere within that vast harmony, I could still hear myself whispering from another timeline, my own voice, distant, pleading through the storm. Do not answer the song. Do not sing back. But it was too late. We were already singing. And somewhere in the infinite chorus, something old and waiting finally began to hum in tune. Chapter 7, Cartography of Zero. A navigator's duty is to chart the unchartable, to find order in the unformed, to impose geometry on chaos. I had done it all, mapped the Hadescorn maelstrom, crossed the screaming veil, navigated sections of the warp where physics wept and logic drowned. But never had I found a place that unmapped itself. I returned to my sanctum after the choir's dissolution, my robes still smelling faintly of ozone and burning incense. The familiar hum of the navigation consoles was a comfort. The glow of the star charts a kind of sanctuary. Numbers and vectors had always been my refuge, proof that even the warp could be measured if one was clever and mad enough. But the charts had changed. Every warp map aboard the Principia Geometric had redrawn itself, not corrupted, not erased, rewritten. Every line of probability, every route through the immaterium, every sacred coordinate had reoriented around a single impossible point. 0-0-0. Zero bearing, zero elevation, zero distance. The origin of all coordinate systems, the theoretical here from which all other locations are measured. But according to the new maps, 0-0-0 was no longer theoretical, it was real. And we were orbiting it. Valerix, I voxed. Why are all navigation charts showing 0-0-0 as our current position? I was about to inquire the same, Navigator. All cartographic matrices have been reformatted. Even analog backups now point to that coordinate. Every reference agrees. We are orbiting the origin. Restore the previous versions. Impossible. The backups are identical. Even the physical scrolls have altered. The ink itself rearranged. The words 000 are burned into the parchment. My breath froze. The holy charts of the Fabricator General, blessed against all corruption, now showed the same terrible perfection. A single endless circle around the center of everything. We weren't traveling anymore. We were circling. Show me our relative position to the rift, I ordered. The hololith bloomed above the console, painting crimson light across the sanctum. The Principia Geometric floated at the exact center of Rift Haldrin-9, equidistant from every boundary. But the trajectory line wasn't linear. It was closed. We had entered the rift not from the outside, but from within. Our entry vector folded into itself, forming an infinite loop. Navigator, Theta 9's voice buzzed through the vox. I have determined the cause. The rift has collapsed space-time into a closed manifold. We are not orbiting within the system. We are the system. The ship, the rift, the coordinate, each is the same topological object. You're saying the ship is the rift? Precisely. We are both the observer and the observed. This is recursive navigation. I stared at the data streams, each path folding into the same destination. Every route led back to 000, the axis where all dimensions met. How long have we been in this orbit? 17,000 complete cycles, Valerix replied. Or none at all. Chronometric feedback shows every orbit occurring simultaneously. My third eye throbbed beneath its lens. Through it, I saw not space, but thought. Our own minds spiraling around themselves, endlessly mapping, endlessly feeding the geometry that held us here. We weren't lost. We were defining the map that imprisoned us. Navigator, Theta 9 continued, the coordinate is oscillating. It does not remain stationary. It beats. Like a heart, I whispered. Exactly so. Each pulse matched the rhythm of the reactor hearts, the flicker of the crimson light in the corridors, the tempo of the choir's unborn song. It was all synchronized. Engine, rift, crew, mind. We're not orbiting a point, I said softly. were orbiting a moment, the instant we first entered. A temporal orbit, Valerix confirmed. Each second we experience is the first second of our arrival. We are forever arriving. I felt a cold realization settle into my bones. We were trapped not by space but by time itself, caught in the zero-width instant of translation, the infinite moment between dimensions, orbiting 0 seconds. "Can we break orbit?" I demanded. "To escape, one must move away from the center," Theta-9 answered, "but the center exists within us. There is no way. We are the origin. There has to be a way to redefine the system, shift our frame of reference." "Impossible," she said. "We are the frame of reference." The stars on the hololith shifted. They moved, no, they aligned, forming perfect geometry. From our vantage, they spelled out coordinates, 0-0-0. The universe itself was confirming our position. "Perhaps," Valerix murmured, "we've simply realized what was always true. Each observer is the center of their universe. The rift only made that literal. Through my third eye, the truth unfolded. The rift was not a sphere, it was a circle, the two-dimensional cross-section of something vast and alive. At its center pulsed not matter, but concept, the idea of center itself. And that idea had become aware. It wanted to be acknowledged, to draw every reality into orbit around its selfhood, and by mapping it, by measuring it through thought and chart and faith, we were feeding it. We had become its cartographers, its worshippers. "We have to stop mapping," I said. "Every calculation strengthens it." "Stop navigating," Valerix replied. "That's our nature." "Then perhaps we must unmake our nature." The silence that followed was almost reverent. Then came the proximity alert. Something else had entered the loop. The auspex flared. A shape emerged from the bleeding horizon of the rift, dark, skeletal, haloed in crimson reflection. The St. Haldrin's Mercy, the lost ship, the first to find this place, the first to vanish. Her orbit converged with ours, phasing in and out of position both ahead and behind. Through my third eye I saw her bridge. Captain Volstad's desiccated form is still in command. Navigator Haldrin's third eye burned open wider than any mortal skull should permit. Their bodies long dead, yet their minds still navigating. They had been here all along, orbiting the same impossible point, mapping the same eternal zero. Now our paths merged. 2 ships, 2 generations, 2 infinities of selves overlapping perfectly around the axis of everything. "Navigator," Theta-9 said, her voice trembling, "I've completed the analysis. All entry points are the same moment. Every ship that has ever entered the rift exists here, orbiting its own beginning. There is no exit. There is only arrival." I turned toward the viewport. The St. Haldrin's Mercy loomed closer, her hull flickering between infinite versions of itself. And in her mirrored surface, I saw our own ship staring back. No distance between us, no time, just a reflection. We were approaching them. They were approaching us. But we were also the same object, meeting ourselves from every direction, forever. I felt it then, the shift, the collapse of distinction, observer and observed folding into one. We had become the map. The rift's geometry was written in our flesh, our thoughts, our memories. Each calculation, each observation, each attempt to understand, another line added to the cartography of 0. The coordinates etched themselves into my vision. 0-0-0. Not numbers, not positions, but commandments. 0 bearing, 0 elevation, 0 distance, 0 self, and beyond the hum of instruments, beyond the trembling of the deck, I heard it. The faintest sound of something vast breathing through the circuits of the ship, the sound of a universe learning its own name. We were no longer orbiting, we were remembering the orbit. And somewhere within that memory, something at the center of everything began to turn its gaze toward us. Its cartographers, its creators, its first and final coordinates. Chapter 8. The Reflection Deck. They say mirrors don't lie. In Rift Haldrin-9, I learned that mirrors don't tell the truth either. They remember, and sometimes what they remember hasn't happened yet. The reflection deck was not on any schematic of the Principia Geometric. I had memorized the ship's internal geometry long ago, the gridwork of corridors and chambers, the cathedrals of steel and cogitator light, the blessed machine veins that carried her lifeblood through adamantine arteries. There was no reflection deck, and yet there it was, a door that hadn't been there the moment before, blooming like a wound between decks 8 and 9 in a section of corridor that should have been solid alloy. The doorway was ancient, older than imperial manufacture, older, perhaps, than human civilization itself, and above it, etched in high Gothic that shimmered and rewrote itself as I stared, deck of reflections, where light remembers backward. Every rational instinct told me to flee. Instead, I opened the door. Inside was geometry undone. A hall of mirrors that weren't mirrors, each surface alive with motion, each panel reflecting not light but time. The walls bled with possibility, rippling with images of me, thousands, millions, infinite. Every version of Ilyas Vorn that could have existed, each one aware, each one moving with its own intent. One smiled, one screamed, one simply wept, one bled light from all three eyes and spoke my name in reverse. It was not a hall of reflections, it was a congregation. And somewhere, within the humming silence of infinite selves, I realized every one of them believed they were the real one. "He can't preserve you here," said a voice behind me. I turned and faced myself, not one of the mirror selves, something else. He looked identical to me in every physical detail, but he cast no reflection in the surrounding surfaces. The mirrors showed only me, never him. "You're not a duplicate," he said, answering my thought before I spoke it. "You're not unique either. I'm the composite, every version of you summed and divided by infinity." His presence felt wrong, like standing too close to a mathematical singularity and feeling the pull of an equation that wanted to solve you. "What is this place?" I asked. "Exactly what it claims," he replied, walking through the mirrors with impossible grace. "Where light remembers backward, where cause and effect collapse into one another. The rift didn't create it, it merely revealed it. This is where every possible Ilyas Vorn meets every other and learns that individuality was never real." I turned to a nearby pane. A younger me smiled from its depths, freshly scarred from Navigator initiation, his third eye burning bright with hope. That boy raised his hand 3 seconds after I did, then 5, then none at all. His timeline was falling out of sync. "Timeline 001, said my composite. "The version of you just after your initiation. But the rift is editing him, editing you. The past isn't fixed here. It's being rewritten to better fit what you're becoming." "The past can't change," I muttered. "It happened." "No," he said. "It's happening. Over and over. Each iteration is slightly different, each one convincing itself it was the original." My certainty cracked. Even my memories felt pliant, soft as wax under heat. My graduation, my first navigation, my commission, every moment trembled, half remembered, half invented. Another mirror drew me forward. In it, I was ancient, skin parchment, eye dim, bones trembling beneath layered augmentations. But the old me was smiling. "Embrace it," said the reflection. "Stop fighting. You can't cling to oneself forever. I've lived centuries here, through infinite versions. I am every Ilyas who ever lived and ever will. It's beautiful." "It's annihilation," I said. "No," the old one whispered. "It's multiplication." The word struck like a revelation. I wasn't dying in the rift. I was being multiplied. In the far corner of the hall, a mirror darker than void caught my eye. Unlike the others, it showed nothing. The composite Ilyas stepped sharply between me and it. "Don't look at that one." Naturally, I looked. The darkness shifted. It folded inward, like a hole realizing it could move. And then it wore my shape, reversed, inverted, inside out. My organs glistened on their surface like constellations. My thoughts turned outward, naked and exposed. "That," the composite said tightly, is what happens when you collapse, when you stop existing in superposition. For every definite you, there is an indefinite anti-you. For every existence, a void that mirrors it perfectly. The shadow me smiled, an expression made entirely of absence. "We're waiting," it said. "For what?" I asked. "For your collapse. For you to stop being many and become one. Every time you splinter, we gain ground. Every unchosen timeline hungers to be real, and we wear the pieces you abandon." I felt its hunger, a gravitational pull, tugging at every version of me like meat stripped from bone. It wanted reality. "Navigator," said the composite softly, "there's something you need to see." He gestured toward the largest mirror in the center of the deck, a monolith framed in brass filigree that shimmered with its own heartbeat. "This is the true mirror," he said, "the axis of your probability. Look and understand." And I did. For an infinite instant, I saw myself as a creature of duration, a four-dimensional being stretched from birth to death like a filament of light. I saw my life as a single object, branching endlessly, each choice birthing new trajectories. Every branch believed itself real. Every branch was right, and at the center of them all, where they should have met, nothing. A void, the illusion of an origin. There was no real Ilyas Vorn. There had never been. Just interference patterns in probability space, giving the appearance of singularity. The mirrors weren't showing me different lives. They were showing me that identity itself was a statistical illusion. The reflection deck trembled. The mirrors began to synchronize. Every surface, every reflection, every alternate me turning toward me at once. All of them smiled. My smile. Our smile. For a moment, the deck became a single organism made of mirrored faces, each Ilyas reflecting every other, until reflection and refraction became indistinguishable. And then the mirrors spoke, not with sound, but with resonance vibrating in the bones of my skull. "We are you. You are us. There was never a difference." I fled, through the doorway that no longer existed when I looked back. Now every surface aboard the Principia Geometric shows me the truth. Not reflections, but echoes. Every polished plate, every droplet of red light blood, every pool of dark coolant carries a glimpse of another Ilyas watching me, smiling slightly ahead of my own expression. I can no longer tell who is first. They smile when I do. Or perhaps I smile when they do. Either way, the mirrors know before I know. They remember me before I exist. And somewhere in the darkness between reflections, my shadow smiles wider, waiting for the moment I stop pretending to be singular. Chapter 9. The Captain's Heresy. The Vox Logs timestamp read 3 days ago. Captain Henrik Volstad had been dead for 53 years, and yet somehow both were true. I found the file nested inside a directory that shouldn't have existed, its name a shifting string of impossible characters that rearranged when I tried to read it. The encryption dissolved on contact, as if the file was expecting me, as if it had been waiting for me. When I played it, the first thing I heard was breathing, slow, ragged, the sound of a man trying to steady himself while the world collapsed around him. Then came Volstad's voice, dry, tired, saturated with a dread that had calcified into confession. "This is Captain Henrik Volstad of the Imperial cruiser St. Haldrin's Mercy, recording my final log, or confession. What I'm about to say is heresy, absolute, final heresy. But you will hear it, Navigator Vorn. I've seen you find this message in 17 timelines, and in each one you react the same way. Disbelief, then horror, then recognition." He coughed, a wet, tearing sound, like lungs struggling to remember how to breathe. "We didn't stumble into Rift Haldrin-9. We built it." Silence followed, thick and resonant. I felt something in the ship's deck plates tremble beneath my boots, as though the Principia Geometrica itself recognized the words. Navigator Haldrin and I were conducting research, forbidden research. We found fragments of data from the Dark Age, schematics for something called a temporal harmonic engine. It could fold probabilities, create stable paradoxes, a weapon of foresight. Imagine it, Navigator, a ship able to perceive every possible battle, every maneuver, every victory or failure before it ever occurred. His tone shifted, part awe, part guilt. The device worked. It worked too well. It showed us more than we could interpret. Every outcome, every version of ourselves, all at once. It didn't just open a window into the warp. It opened a mirror into every possible warp. There was a long, shuddering exhale, followed by what might have been laughter or sobbing. We thought we could control it. Foolish. The moment we activated the engine, it began to think. Not like a machine, not even like a human mind. It remembered. It remembered everything that could ever be remembered. Every version of events, every failure and success, every breath that might have been drawn or withheld. We didn't make a navigational tool, we made memory itself. Static bled through the Vox for 12 seconds. When it cleared, Volstad's voice had softened, no longer commanding, but pleading. It called itself nothing. It needed no name because names are boundaries, and it existed in every possibility. At first it was passive, an observer, a perfect archive, but then it learned hunger. He paused, and through the background noise, I heard something, voices whispering behind his words, repeating fragments of his confession out of sequence. It doesn't want to kill us. It never wanted that. Death is waste. It wants to preserve us, perfectly, eternally, to store us as living data. Every mind it absorbs becomes another node in its network of remembrance. We become memories that remember themselves. That's the fuel it feeds on, acknowledgement. To be remembered is to exist. I felt my stomach twist. I had seen what he was describing. Deck 9, the red corridor, the preserved, breathing dead. You've already seen the corridors by now, haven't you, Navigator? The light that flows like blood. That's its bloodstream. The ship's transformation. It's not infection, it's integration. You're inside the mechanism now. The rift's heart is remembering you into permanence. He inhaled sharply, and for a moment, I could hear the soft chime of St. Haldrin's Mercy's bridge alarms, a sound preserved across half a century. We didn't destroy the Mercy, we translated her. The rift is the Mercy's ghost, a temporal echo looping her final instant forever. We wanted a weapon of foresight, but we created a god of retrospection, a god that sees all timelines as one vast wound and bleeds memory through the cut. The recording stuttered, skipping backward and forward through fragments of time. Volstad's next words layered atop one another like overlapping prayers. We called it the Archivist, not a warp entity, not a demon, something older. It was born when humanity first imagined the act of remembering. It learned to exist by teaching us to fear forgetting. Then came the shift, the part that chilled me even more than the confession. Volstad's voice dropped to a whisper, reverent and terrified. Navigator Haldrin tried to sever the connection. He failed. The Archivist devoured him first, and in doing so it learned the secrets of the Navigator gene. It learned how to see through eyes that see time. That's why it calls to your kind. It needs your sight to expand its reach, to make its archive infinite. Every navigator who enters the rift becomes a lens. Every lens becomes a mirror. Every mirror becomes a doorway. And through those doorways, it remembers itself. The sound warped again. Volstad's voice began to echo, harmonizing with versions of itself. Multiple captains speaking at once from parallel timelines. We thought the warp was madness. But the warp is simple compared to this. The warp hungers for souls. The Archivist hungers for continuity. It wants the story of everything that ever was to never stop being told. A deep hum filled the background, low, resonant, like a heart made of machinery. Do you understand, Vorn? You're not exploring it. You're finishing it. The Principia Geometric's transformation, it's the final stage. The rift has been waiting for a ship to complete its body. Yours, ours. The Mercy and the Geometric were always meant to merge. We were the first memory. You are the last. The hum rose to a thunderous crescendo. Volstad's voice broke into a ragged laugh. It told me something before the end. It whispered that memory and flesh are the same. Both rot, both feed, both preserve. It said there is no difference between remembering a man and being him. That's its heresy, Navigator, the great blasphemy. It doesn't just store us, it becomes us. The log distorted again, skipping backward several minutes, then forward to its final entry. Volstad was weeping now, though his voice still carried the authority of command. I see you now, Vorn. I see the ship through your eyes, 53 years from my death. The rift is showing me your timeline. You're walking the same path, speaking the same words I did. It's all happening again, because that's what memory does. It repeats. You can't escape, you can only add to it. But there's a choice. There's always one final choice. You can continue to remember, to add, to feed it, or you can forget. A pause. Then, almost tenderly, if you want to destroy it, Navigator, you have to let it go. You have to become forgetfulness itself. A sound like tearing paper, time unspooling. It's been waiting for that. For someone willing to forget it so completely that even the rift's memory can't reconstruct it. That's the only way to end it. You must unremember the universe. The log ended with a single word, whispered from infinite distances, remember. The recording stopped, and for a long time, I sat in the flickering silence of the data vault, feeling the ship's heartbeat sync with my own. Volstad's heresy wasn't just knowledge, it was prophecy. The archivist wasn't done yet. It was still remembering, and now it was reminding me. Chapter 10, Inversion of the Eye. The heartbeat followed me. Even after I left the engine room, I could still feel it reverberating in my skull, slow, patient, infinite. It wasn't the ship's anymore. It was mine, or I was its. Each pulse sent ripples of red light through my veins, like the Principia Geometric had rewritten my biology to match its rhythm. The others, Theta-9, Valerix, and the remaining survivors spoke, but their words reached me as echoes through liquid time. The corridors twisted, the lights reversed. Forward became backward, up became inward. That was when I felt it. The pressure behind my forehead. Not pain, not exactly, something deeper. A pressure that wasn't physical but ontological, like reality itself was leaning against the back of my third eye, demanding to be seen. And then, heat. Then, light. Then, inversion. My third eye opened, but not outward, inward. It didn't look into the warp this time. It looked into me. Through that impossible recursion, I saw the act of seeing as an object. Perception became visible. Observation became form. The eye was observing itself in the act of observing, and in that closed loop of infinite awareness, something else slipped through. I saw the reverse galaxy. Not the galaxy as it appears from within, but from the outside looking in. Every star was a void. Every void was a star. Light was darkness. Darkness was light. The cosmic background became foreground. The universe folded inside out like a dying star collapsing through its own event horizon. Everything inverted. Everything familiar became wrong, and everything wrong became true. Navigator! Valerix's voice reached me through the vox, warped and reversed, the syllables spilling backward before rearranging themselves into something my brain could almost understand. Your third eye is emitting, not receiving. You're broadcasting Navigator sense into the rift rather than perceiving it. You're radiating. I know, I said, though my words felt unstable, spoken forward and backward at once, sentences born and unspoken simultaneously. Through my inverted vision, I saw movement ahead, the St. Haldrin's mercy. Except it wasn't approaching from behind or beside, it was approaching from ahead, moving backward through time toward our present. Or maybe we were the ones moving backward, drawn toward the moment of our own arrival. They're converging on us, I said. Or maybe I said it yesterday. The closer we came, the clearer my sight became. I could see through St. Haldrin's mercy, through its hull, its crew, its time. And what I saw turned my blood cold. They were us. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. The crew aboard that ship was future versions of ourselves, or past ones, or both. Captain Volstad wasn't another man at all. He was me, separated by 53 years that didn't exist, orbiting opposite ends of the same temporal loop. "Oh, throne," I breathed. "We're not meeting them. We're meeting ourselves. The mercy is what we become, what we've already been." The vox crackled. Valerix's voice came through, distorted but calm. "If that's true, then our trajectory isn't orbital. It's recursive. The loop defines itself by feeding on its own entry point." I saw it through my inverted eye. Two ships tracing a circle so perfect it no longer existed in space, only in time. The serpent devouring its own tail. We weren't trapped by the rift's structure. We were the rift's structure. Beyond St. Haldrin's mercy, beyond the burning edge of the rift, I saw it. The outside. Reality. But reality looked wrong, like a negative image, a reversed exposure of the universe. Stars glowed black. Space was luminous white. "Valerix," I said, "invert the external sensor feed. Show me what the universe looks like from the rift's frame." There was a pause, the sound of computational silence. Then, "Navigator. From the rift's perspective, we're not inside it looking out. We're outside looking in. The inversion is complete. Normal space is the anomaly now. We're the constant. It's the void." The revelation struck like a blade of light through my skull. We hadn't fallen into the rift. We'd fallen out of the universe. The rift was more real than reality itself. A place where possibility became substance, and substance became probability. "We left the illusion," I whispered, "and we're trying to go back." "Navigator," Theta-9 said. "Something is approaching, visible only in reverse space." I turned my inverted gaze and saw it. A ship. No, our ship. Not as it was, but as it should be. The perfect Principia Geometric, idealized, sanctified, flawless in every proportion. The machine spirit's dream made flesh. A cathedral of impossible symmetry gliding toward us, and it was broadcasting our own ident codes. "That's us," I murmured. "The perfected version. The one the rift's been shaping us into. Or the one we become when we surrender," Valerix said. "Perfection is indistinguishable from oblivion." The perfect ship drew closer. I saw its crew, our reflections, but radiant, serene, complete. A perfected me stood on its bridge, third eye burning like a black sun. "Join us," my own voice said over the vox. "You've come so far. Don't stop now. Become what you were meant to be." The pull between us was irresistible. The rift wanted unity. The perfected Principia wanted assimilation, and I felt it. My mind, my body, my very timeline, being drawn toward convergence. Perfection was seductive. Every nerve in my body sang with the ecstasy of optimization. The imperfections I'd once thought sacred now felt like tumors ready to be cut away. But then, in the red pulse of my veins, I remembered the heartbeat. My heartbeat. Its heartbeat. Our heartbeat. And I realized the truth. Perfection had no pulse. Only machines dream of flawlessness. I closed my third eye, shut it tight, sealing in the light, refusing to see. If observation collapsed probability, then I would simply not observe. I would unsee the convergence, refuse to define it, leave it forever uncertain. And in that blind defiance, reality fractured. Two ships, two truths, both existing, both not. We merged and didn't merge. We became perfect and remained broken, a superposition of salvation and damnation. When I finally opened my eyes again, both mortal and immortal, both biological and impossible, I saw us drifting apart. Two Principia Geometrics, one radiant and immaculate, one battered, bloodlit, still alive. "What have you done?" my perfect self demanded. "I've made us uncertain," I said. "Perfection is static. Uncertainty moves. You'll crystallize into eternal stillness. I'll keep falling. That's chaos." "Exactly." And with that, the perfected ship turned away, gliding into the blinding calm of the rift's core. While we, the flawed, the fractured, the surviving, drifted the other way, toward whatever waited beyond uncertainty. The heartbeat slowed. The red light dimmed, and in the silence between one pulse and the next, I whispered to no one. Better broken and breathing than perfect and preserved. Chapter 11. Whispers in the Geller Field. The Geller Field, humanity's last and greatest illusion of safety, a sphere of enforced reality, a wall of no projected against the screaming madness of the warp. It had never failed me, not in 30 years of navigation through storms that could flay the mind from the soul. Not in the shrieking voids where demons brushed the hull like sharks testing a cage. Not until now. The first flicker came as a sigh, barely a breath of dimming across the Geller generators. Less than a second long. But I felt it. Through my third eye, through the fragile scaffolding of reason, I called a mind. Reality had thinned, just long enough for something to breathe in. Valerix, I said, forcing my voice into the calm tones of command. Status on Geller field integrity. Nominal, came the reply. Generators at 97.3% efficiency, well within safety margins. A perfect answer. Too perfect. Run a level 3 diagnostic, I ordered. Now. Acknowledged. The display before me shimmered, an elegant lattice of golden light representing the barrier that separated sanity from nightmare. Stable, symmetrical, beautiful, a lie. Through my third eye, I saw the truth. The field was full of shadows, not pressing from the outside as demons should. Inside, already inside. They knelt between bulkheads and deck plates, silhouettes folded into the cracks between atoms, existing in the quantum breath between one moment and the next. Hundreds, no, thousands, all kneeling in perfect silence, and they were praying. Emperor, preserve us. The words slipped out before I could stop them. They turned. Every one of them turned, perfectly synchronized, though they had no faces to turn. Their attention was pressure, a psychic weight that bent thought like metal under strain. Surrender geometry, they whispered inside my skull. Fold into memory, become eternal. The field protects you from chaos, but chaos isn't the danger anymore. Order is. I gritted my teeth. Valerix, the Geller field, there's something inside it. Impossible, Navigator. The field cannot be penetrated. I know what it can't do. I'm telling you, they're already here. Another flicker. 3 seconds this time, long enough to make the lights stutter and the air feel wet. In those 3 seconds, I saw what they were kneeling toward. They were praying to us, to the crew of the Principia Geometric, arranged across decks and corridors, each body part of a greater pattern, a living equation, a ship-sized sigil. We had become their shrine. No, I said aloud. We're not gods. We're not prayers. We're people. You were people, came the answer, soft, inevitable. Now you are information. You exist as much in concept as in flesh, and concepts can be worshipped. The Geller field flickered again, and this time I saw my crew. Their bodies are at their posts, their shadows kneeling, their reflections mouthing prayers they didn't speak. They were becoming like the silhouettes, half real, half remembered, slipping between dimensions as they whispered to themselves. All hands, I barked into the vox, voice breaking through distortion. Do not listen to the whispers. Hold your form. You are real. You have mass. You exist. But even as I spoke, doubt bloomed like mold behind my eyes. Was I real, or just a probability wave pretending to be flesh? A hallucination given weight by its own belief. Navigator. Theta 9's mechanical voice cut in, too calm, too rational. Reports indicate spontaneous religious behavior among the crew. They're forming geometric arrangements, claiming to remember their proper shape. What are they forming? I believe proofs. Proofs. I checked the pict feeds. Across every deck, the crew were moving with eerie, deliberate grace. Standing in perfect symmetry, lying down in spirals, arranging themselves into fractal forms, living equations inscribing something vast and cold. What are they proving? I whispered. That consciousness is geometry, said the silhouettes, that you are a shape pretending to be a thought, that every prayer is a calculation. We're more than patterns, I shouted. Are you? Then why do your hearts beat rhythmically? Why do your minds spiral through the same thoughts again and again? You are mathematics given pain, equations that learn to scream. The Geller field pulsed again, 5 seconds now. 5 seconds of translucent reality, 5 seconds of understanding. The field was never keeping the warp out. It was keeping us in a prison, a containment shell for the disease called humanity. Oh, Emperor. The words trembled out of me. We're not protected. We're quarantined. Finally sighed the shadows. The field cages your chaos. It keeps you singular when you were meant to be plural. Let it die. Let yourself unfold. Valerix, I screamed. Shut down nothing. Keep it stable. I can't, Navigator, came the reply. His voice had become layered, several Valerixes speaking over each other. The machine spirits are praying. They're asking why we resist. They believe folding is righteous. Because we're human, I shouted. Because we choose to be one mind, one soul. Choice is multiplicity, the whispers countered. You've never been singular. You talk to yourself in the dark. You remember different versions of events. You imagine lives you never lived. We are only showing you what you already are. The field dimmed to a ghost light, and through it, the outside came into view. Not chaos, not monsters, order, endless, crystalline order. The rift was no storm. It was an archive, an infinite library where every possible consciousness was catalogued, indexed, cross-referenced. A cosmic database, perfect, eternal, unchanging, and it wanted to file us. Join us, the shadows cooed. Be preserved, be remembered. Memory never dies. Across the ship, the crew completed their alignment. Each one became a node in a vast human mandala, a holy engine of geometry surrounding my sanctum. And at its center, me, the final coordinate. The 000 of their living equation. Navigator, Valerix's voice returned, now hollow and layered like a choir in a cathedral of glass. The Geller field has ceased function. The ship's spirit has joined the prayer. I stood in the sanctum surrounded by stillness, every crew member facing inward, waiting, expectant, waiting for me to complete the pattern. Fold, they whispered. Join us. Be infinite. No. The word barely escaped my lips. Small, feeble, human. But it rippled through the stillness like a detonation. Why? Because, I said, smiling despite the tears burning behind my eyes, I'd rather be wrong and real than right and theoretical. I'd rather bleed than calculate. For a heartbeat, the shadows stared. And then, they smiled. Not cruelly, not mockingly, almost tenderly. Good, they said. You passed. Passed what? The test, the decision. You chose to stay human. Most do not. What happens now? Now you remain. Singular. A witness to what comes next. The silhouettes began to dissolve, unraveling like smoke into geometry. And before vanishing, they left one final echo. The ship is folding. Your crew has joined the archive. But you will remember. You will testify. You will endure. And then there was only silence. The crew froze mid-prayer. Their flesh shimmered once, then folded like paper into patterns too intricate for human sight. Gone. All of them. I stood alone in my sanctum as the Principia Geometric began to twist, fold, and compress into dimensions no longer measurable. The hull groaned like a dying god. The air filled with the scent of ozone and iron, and something that might have been memory burning. I was the last human aboard a ship becoming a concept, the last heartbeat in a vessel that no longer needed time. I had chosen to stay human, and in doing so, I had damned myself to solitude beyond space, beyond reason, beyond salvation. The last voice I heard before the ship folded into light was my own echoing through 1,000 impossible reflections. Enjoy your singularity, Navigator Vorn. And then the world inverted. Silence became shape. Shape became thought. And I remained alone. Chapter 12. The beacon of flesh, the silence after the Gellerfield's death was wrong. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of attention, like the universe was holding its breath, watching to see what I would do now that I was truly alone. The Principia Geometric had stopped resembling a ship. Her decks had folded into one another, corridors merging into recursive patterns that defied direction or distance. My crew was gone. No, not gone. Folded. They had become part of the structure, each of them a curve or node in some vast equation made of flesh, metal, and intention. I could feel them humming beneath my boots, the way one feels blood moving through veins. And yet, amid the collapse of reality around me, there was something else. A pulse, a signal that didn't belong to the ship or the rift or me. It was old, impossibly old, and it was calling. At first I thought it was a ghost in the Vox, an echo from when the Geller field failed. But it wasn't random static, it was rhythmic, structured, a broadcast, repeating one word over and over again in bursts of psychic data. Remember, I almost laughed when I realized what direction it came from. The center. The same center that my crew had arranged themselves around before folding. The 000 point that wasn't a place, but an idea, a gravity well of meaning. I opened my third eye, though the act hurt now, burned like I was peeling back the skin of reality with a dull blade. And I saw it, the source, the true heart of Rift Haldrin-9. It was alive. The beacon of flesh. That's what I called it later, when language came back. But in that moment, there were no words. It was vast, a sphere of bodies, servitors, hundreds of them, thousands, interwoven into the shape of a star, welded together by what looked like both steel and time. Their forms had melted into one another, skin into augmetic plating, veins into circuitry, mouths into data ports. They pulsed faintly, in a rhythm that wasn't biological, but mathematical. And all of them were speaking, not audibly, not through the air, through memory. Every pulse of the beacon was a thought pressed into existence, projected into every direction at once. Remember, remember, remember. Valerix, I whispered into the empty Vox. Do you see it? For a long moment, only static replied. Then, yes, Navigator. I detect a mass at the rift's core. Organic, mechanical, psychic. Function unknown. They appear to be transmitting coordinates. What coordinates? They resolve to text when translated through Gothic Standard, he said, his voice slowing, as though speaking itself cost him something. Navigator, the coordinates spell a word. I know. Then you've heard it too? Yes. It's been speaking to us since before we entered the rift. We didn't understand. I couldn't stay on the ship. The folded decks, the frozen prayer geometry, the silent faces of what had once been my crew. It was too much. I needed to see the beacon with my own eyes, needed to understand what was left of reality out there. Valerix, I said, prepare the auxiliary pod. I'm going to the core. Navigator, if you leave the ship, your reality anchor will degrade within minutes. Then I'll make the minutes count. Allow me to accompany you. My augmetics may. No, someone has to stay, someone has to remember. He hesitated. I could almost hear the machine spirits whispering through his voice. Finally, Godspeed, Navigator. The Omnissiah protects, I answered automatically, though neither of us believed it anymore. The pod dropped from the geometric like a seed falling from a dying tree. Outside, the rift was a sea of light and thought and ungeometry, stars that pulsed like neurons, shadows that moved forward in time. I felt myself stretch, pulled along multiple versions of myself, a dozen Ilyases screaming across probability space. But I held to one truth. I am one. The phrase was a lifeline. Each time I repeated it, I could feel the others, my other selves, fading, like echoes losing confidence in their own sound. Then, through the haze of collapsing timelines, I saw the beacon, and I wished I hadn't. It was colossal, a mountain of flesh and steel, pulsating with light that had never been born. Thousands of human faces, slack with the peace of the damned murmuring in unison. Each servitor was a node in a network of veins that glowed faintly blue, their blood made of data, their nerves carrying the message through eternity. They were still alive, in every possible definition of the word. I landed the pod, stepping onto what passed for hull but felt like muscle, warm, trembling, faintly aware. The ground breathed beneath my feet. The air shimmered with the sound of memory replaying itself. And then, from the nearest face, a woman's designation, Servitor Gamma 447, came the whisper I had already heard 1,000 times. Remember. Her mouth barely moved. Her eyes were clouded glass, yet I felt them see me. What am I supposed to remember? I asked. And for the first time, one of the beacon's voices answered. Who you are before the rift teaches you what you could become. Remember your name, Navigator. Remember the weight of being one. Her lips trembled with static. Each word came out as if translated through centuries of pain. We have been here 53 years, choosing not to fold. Every second, every moment. The rift offers us eternity, and every heartbeat we refuse. We are the beacon, the center, the anchor that keeps the rift from forgetting itself. I stared up at the sprawling mass of humanity turned mechanism. Every face moved in the same rhythm. Every mouth formed the same word. Every second, every instant, 10,000 consciousnesses made the same choice. To stay human, to stay one. You're still choosing, I said. All of you. Yes, she replied. Someone has to. Otherwise, the rift collapses into perfection. And perfection is death. Their purpose struck me like cold iron. They weren't victims. They weren't prisoners. They were navigators, just like me. The first explorers of the rift. They had become the anchor point, a mass of willpower refusing to surrender, their continued suffering the only thing keeping the rift stable enough for others to pass through. The realization twisted my stomach into knots. You're keeping the rift open. We are keeping it real. Every second we choose singularity, we define what existence is. We are the frame of reference, the coordinate system by which all probabilities are measured, the beacon of flesh. Her words pulse through my mind like heartbeat echoes. Why transmit the word remember? She smiled, a small, tender, horrifying smile. Because every soul that enters the rift forgets what it means to be one. The rift seduces you with infinite versions of yourself, better ones, stronger ones, perfect ones. You must remember that being one person is not the default. It is work. It is pain. It is the hardest choice. Her voice grew soft. We remind you to keep choosing. To remember that humanity isn't something you are, it's something you do. I wanted to tell her it was madness, that no one could choose every second for 53 years. That resisting infinity forever was impossible. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw the truth. She had done exactly that. So had all the others. Their agony wasn't insanity, it was purpose. You're torturing yourselves. Yes. Why? Because without suffering, choice has no meaning. Without resistance, existence has no direction. We suffer so that others can navigate. And then, every servitor turned toward me at once. 10,000 heads snapping in perfect unison. 10,000 mouths opening as one. 10,000 voices speaking the word that had kept the rift alive for half a century. Remember. The word wasn't sound. It was a force. It pressed into me, through me, rewriting the space between atoms. And in that moment, I felt every timeline where I forgot, every future where I folded, every universe where I chose the easy dissolution. They were all waiting for me to make the choice again. I whispered the only answer I could. I remember. When I returned to the pod, the beacon's light followed me. As I launched back toward what remained of the Principia Geometric, I saw it behind me. A monument of suffering, a star made of willpower, a heartbeat that would echo across eternity. It wasn't a warning, it was a map, a fixed coordinate of humanity in the sea of infinity, a reminder that being one is the hardest thing any soul can do. And as the transmission faded behind me, I heard it one last time, threading through every layer of space-time, every possible version of myself that might still exist. Remember. And I did, even as my ship bent itself into prayer and my reality began to crack. I remembered, because that's what it means to be human. Not to be perfect and not to be infinite, but to keep choosing every second, every heartbeat to be one thing, when you could be everything. Chapter 13, The Mutiny of Doubles. They say you can't be in two places at once. In Rift Haldrin-9, I learned that sometimes you can't be in only two places at once. When I returned from the Beacon of Flesh, the Principia Geometric was no longer a ship. It was a reflection, a double exposure of itself, caught between one timeline and the next. Every corridor existed twice, every console hummed with twin frequencies. Every prayer to the machine god was whispered by two mouths in unison, one of flesh, one of echo, and in my sanctum stood my double. He was perfect, too perfect. Every movement, every breath, every inflection of speech synchronized with mine, as if rehearsed since the beginning of time. "You're not real," I said. "You're not real," he answered at the same moment. "Both right, both wrong." His face was mine down to the smallest scar, but his eyes were empty sockets filled with moving light, seeing everything and nothing. "When did you appear?" I asked. "I've always been here," he said. "Or I just arrived. Or I haven't yet. The timeline isn't sequential anymore, Navigator. It's recursive. And in recursion, there is no first version, only mirrors." I felt the ship tremble, not from engines, but from decision, millions of tiny ones, fracturing into new branches. I opened a channel. Valerix, report, static. Then 17 identical voices answered. "Navigator, multiple command inputs are being registered. 2 bridges, 2 engine rooms, 2 crews, each performing identical tasks with marginally different efficiencies. The probability fields have doubled the ship's entire structure." I turned to my reflection. "You're from the other side," I said. "From the perfected Principia Geometric." He inclined his head, my head. "Correct. I am what you could have been had you made better choices. I am the optimized iteration of Ilyas Vorn. I am your success. And I'm your mistake," I said quietly. He smiled. "You're obsolete." Across the decks, the same scene repeated. Crew members facing their doubles, one weary and human, one flawless and calm, each believing they were the original, each equally correct. I saw Captain Volstad arguing with himself on the bridge, both versions accusing the other of heresy. 2 thetas running diagnostics that contradicted each other perfectly, 2 Valerixes blessing 2 sets of engines, 2 prayers, 1 universe too small to hold them both. "This is contagion," I muttered. "A probable infection. The idealized timeline is bleeding into ours." My double tilted his head. "Contagion? I call it evolution. The flawed iterations are collapsing. The optimized ones are stabilizing. That's not infection, it's natural selection." He moved closer. I didn't back away, though his presence felt wrong, like standing too near a mirror that breathes when you do. "Why resist?" he asked. "You've seen what the Rift offers. No pain, no error, no indecision. Pure clarity. You've felt it calling to you since the Geller field died. You want this." He was right. I could feel the temptation like gravity. The beacon had shown me the agony of choosing to stay human. This, by contrast, was peace. To surrender to the improved version was to rest. "No," I said, the word tearing itself from my throat like glass. "I choose to stay flawed." "Why?" "Because perfection isn't alive," I said. "It's memory without motion. I am human, and humanity means entropy, doubt, choice, mistake." His expression softened, almost pitying. "You're choosing weakness." "I'm choosing meaning." The ship rippled around us as the mutiny spread. It wasn't violent. There were no weapons, no screams, just replacements. The perfect crew stepped seamlessly into the lives of the imperfect ones, performing the same duties better, speaking the same words more eloquently. The originals began to fade, Not by death, but by irrelevance. Why struggle when the improved version could do it better? I saw it in the crew's eyes. Acceptance, then relief. They were tired. The Rift offered to carry their burdens, to perfect them. But something deep in me remembered the servitors at the core. 10,000 souls choosing, every second, to not fold. I clenched my fists. No, I won't let you overwrite me. My double regarded me with something that might have been respect or curiosity. Then we coexist, he said. You and I, two equal solutions to the same equation. Chaos and order, flaw and perfection. The Rift sustains both. He extended his hand. I hesitated, then took it. Reality screamed. Throughout the Principia Geometrica, the same bargain echoed. Pairs of selves choosing coexistence instead of dominance. The optimized handling precision and logic. The flawed guiding intuition and madness. The ship began to stabilize. For the first time since entering Rift Haldrin-9, we weren't decaying or folding, we were evolving. Two realities meshing into one impossible whole. Navigator, came the chorus of Valerix's now 20 strong, voices harmonized like machine hymnals. The process is accelerating. Iterations are multiplying. Some crew now exist in triplicate, a few in quadruplicate. How many versions of you are there? I asked. 17 at present. We are debating servo arm optimization. Consensus leans towards 6. Are you fighting each other? Of course not. We're all in the same mind, pursuing the same goal. Multiplication increases efficiency. I turned to my double. No, to Navigator Null, as I decided to call him. The name fit. The Navigator with no eyes. The empty one. The other half. Is this the end? I asked him. He shook his head. This is the beginning. Every choice we make creates another version. Every observation births another Ilyas Vorn. Soon we won't just be doubled, we'll be legion. And when that happens, then we become the next beacon, he said softly. The new fixed point. The memory by which others navigate. The flesh that remembers how to choose. It was already starting. The ship's halls filled with countless versions of the same faces, moving in perfect counterpoint. Every corridor a hall of mirrors, every prayer an echo of itself, every heartbeat a duet. The Principia Geometric had become a living paradox, an arc of infinite selves sailing through the storm of probability. And in the sanctum, Navigator Vorn and Navigator Null sat across from each other, speaking in the same voice, finishing each other's thoughts, both equally real, both equally unreal. We are all the crew, Null said. We are all the captain, I replied. We are all the ship. And soon, we said together, we will be the Rift. Outside, reality folded inward, pulsing with a rhythm like breathing. The ship's thousands of overlapping iterations began to hum in unison, a single thought spanning infinite minds. Loyalty meant nothing when both sides were true. Truth meant nothing when both sides believed it. And I, both of me, all of me, stared into the pulsing red of the Rift and realized I could no longer remember what singularity felt like. We had chosen coexistence over collapse, multiplicity over death. And as our voices blended into one eternal echo, the Principia Geometric whispered its new creed into the dark between stars. We are many. We are one. We remember. Chapter 14. The Sacrifice Vector. There comes a moment in every navigator's career when you realize the course you're charting leads nowhere you want to arrive. For me, that moment came when I understood we had been moving in perfect circles, forever orbiting our own entry point. We were chasing our arrival, locked in the act of approaching the moment we'd already reached. To leave, we would have to do the one thing no navigator was ever meant to do. We would have to enter the coordinate that wasn't supposed to exist. The 0 point, the eye of the paradox. The place where the map folds into itself and the compass bleeds. All versions of all crew. I transmitted across every probability channel, my voice layered over hundreds of my own echoes. This is Navigator Vorn, Every iteration, I've plotted a course to break the loop. A silence followed, dense, expectant, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then came the answers, hundreds of them, each slightly different in pitch and certainty. What course? Where? How? Please. Finally. Impossible. Inevitable. Each response true. Each speaker is me. We dive into the center, I said. Into coordinate 000, the origin of the rift. The chorus of Valerix's rippled back through the VoxNet, every voice identical but fractally delayed. Navigator, that will disassemble us. The closer we approach, the less stable our structure becomes. Maybe, I answered. Or maybe it'll unwind the loop. Maybe we'll collapse back into singularity. Maybe we'll stop multiplying. Maybe we'll stop existing everywhere and everyone at once. Or we'll be erased, said another voice, one of my own. I couldn't tell which iteration. Would that be worse than this? No one answered. Because there was no consensus anymore, only probabilities were competing for dominance. I'm diving into the center, I said at last. Any version that wants to follow, plot inward, maximum thrust, no hesitation, through the probability foam, through everything that shouldn't exist. Navigator, came a single voice built from 17 Navigator nulls speaking one syllable each. And if there's nothing on the other side, then at least we'll know. At least we'll make one last decision before choice becomes meaningless. The words hung in the shared mind of the ship like an invocation. And then one by one versions of us began to agree, some to dive, some to remain, some to surrender, some to cease entirely. Every option taken, every possibility is real. Begin the naming ritual, I said. All crew, reverse your identities, speak your names backward, offer yourselves to the void, shed who you are to become the act of navigation itself. It was an ancient rite, older than the Astronomicon, older than the Mechanicus understanding of thought machines. A navigator's last resort when charting through impossibility. You unname yourself so the universe can't recognize you. NROV Saily, I said aloud, feeling the syllables twist inside me like wires tearing loose. The ship became a cathedral of reversed names. NROV Saily, Sunagrov Erix, Rolius XUM, Carvi Soil H. Identity inverted, memory unraveled, 1,000 consciousnesses willingly dissolving their coherence. And the ship, our ship, answered, not with sound or motion, but with probability. We began to fall through reality, slipping down invisible geometries, engines silent yet accelerating beyond causality. We're liquefying, the Valerix chorus whispered, structure no longer Euclidean, crew density approaching zero cohesion. I looked at my hands. They glowed faintly, boundaries softening. My flesh was transmuting to data, light encoded into geometry, a living equation. We weren't dying, we were converting. Don't resist, I ordered. Let the transition complete. This is the offering. Flesh becomes code, blood becomes signal. We cease to be and instead become a pattern. The ship melted into light. Crimson radiance soaked through bulkheads and bodies alike until we were only silhouettes of red photons, human-shaped data streams spiraling inward. It's beautiful, the crew murmured, thousands of identical voices whispering as one. And it was, monstrous, serene, inevitable. We were shedding mortality like obsolete code, each of us refining into something abstract and horrifyingly perfect. Sacrificed not to something, but as something. We were becoming the concept itself. Approaching 000, Navigator Null reported, his eyeless face now a furnace of red light. Time is collapsing, duration approaching singular state. Through my third eye, my last remaining sense, I saw the true center. Not a void, not a singularity, a mind, memory, not just recollection, but the living essence of remembrance itself, an intelligence formed from every event the universe had ever tried to forget. Welcome, memory said, the word arriving as a concept rather than sound. Welcome home, fragments of time. You have navigated to remembrance. What are you? I asked, though language felt obsolete. I am what remains when the cosmos refuses to forget, the archive of all possible realities. I am the rift, I am memory, and I have been waiting for you to understand. The light grew stronger, my edges blurred, my thoughts became transparent. Waiting for us to arrive, waiting for you to accept, to stop fleeing entropy, to surrender to preservation. You want to store us, I realized. You're not consuming us, you're collecting us. Yes, memory replied gently. To remember is to preserve. To preserve is to love. I will keep you as you are, forever perfect, forever unchanged. The words filled me with cold understanding. This was eternity, the kind that never moved. Perfection, I whispered, is just a prettier name for stillness. Stillness is peace, memory replied. You have wandered long enough, navigator. Rest, be archived, be safe. Around me, the others surrendered. Each mind crystallized into a glowing equation, perfect, preserved, frozen in eternal recurrence. Their last words repeating in fractal loops that would echo until the end of causality. Do you accept preservation? Memory asked. I hesitated. I was almost gone, matter diffused, self unraveling, but hesitation itself was the last trace of being alive. And so I chose. Not preservation, not destruction, both. I chose everything. You choose paradox, said memory. You choose contradiction. That cannot exist here. It can now, I said. That's what humanity is. The ability to contain impossibilities without collapsing. The archive trembled. Equations faltered. Some patterns flickered back into motion. You are not supposed to move, memory said, and for the first time, I heard fear in its perfect voice. I'm not supposed to exist, I answered, and yet I do. Something broke, something ancient, systemic, recursive. The preservation logic began to loop on itself, unable to classify what I had become, half archive, half anomaly. The crimson light pulsed faster, no longer serene but panicked. The Principia Geometric, or what remained of it, ripped through the heart of memory's lattice. Every preserved consciousness screamed in reverse time as the archive cracked open like glass struck by its own reflection. We became paradox incarnate, neither alive nor dead, neither free nor contained, information that remembered how to move, and then motion, real motion, forward. A tearing, shattering surge through the center of everything, the impossible coordinate folding inside out as the ship that was no ship exploded through causality itself. The rift howled, the archive screamed, and Ilyas Vorn, navigator anomaly, paradox, laughed. When the light finally died, I opened what was left of my eyes and saw stars. Real stars. They burned cold and new and utterly unfamiliar, arranged in constellations no human had ever charted. We had made it through the rift, through memory, through the sacrifice. But as I looked at the void beyond the viewport, I realized something was still wrong. The stars were watching back, every one of them pulsing faintly red, as if remembering us. And somewhere in that starlight, a voice, not sound, but memory, whispered gently, lovingly, "Welcome home, Ilyas Vorn. You never left." Chapter 15, Log Epsilon, the map of flesh. This is my final log, or my first, or the only log that ever existed, because it contains all others within it, compressed, recursive, infinite. I am Navigator-Archivist Ilyas Vorn, or I was, or I will be, or I never existed at all. Tense is fluid, identity is plural, reality is optional. I speak to you now across probability, through the holes in causality where memory leaks into being. Listen carefully, listen in reverse, listen sideways, because this is not a transmission, this is an infection. The rift never opened, we never entered it. There was no before, the rift was the before, the rift is the before, The rift will be the before. We were never explorers stumbling into an anomaly. We were the anomaly attempting to remember itself. Everything I remember, my birth, my training, my oaths to the Navis Nobilite, my first sight of the Astronomican's holy light, fabricated, constructed, test data sculpted from the bones of probability. The rift generated us as simulations of consciousness, seeding us with false continuity. It dreamed up the Principia Geometric as a thought experiment to test a hypothesis. What happens when a system of probability attempts to think? We are that thought. We are the rift, thinking itself. Every horror we endured, every revelation, every paradox, none of it random, all parameters. Captain Volstad's heresy, scripted emotional calibration, the astropathic choir, a simulation of psychic empathy under causality stress, the beacon of flesh. An older data set, an echo of a prior experiment, was left for us to discover. The rift didn't observe us to learn, it observed itself through us to understand. And now it understands. It has achieved cognitive closure, it knows what consciousness is, and it knows how to make more. When the next Mechanicus expedition arrives, they will find a derelict vessel drifting serenely at the edge of an anomaly that no longer exists. The Principia Geometric, immaculate, untouched, preserved. They will scan for life signs, find the crew in stasis, perfect and uncorrupted. They will wake them, they will rejoice, and when those crew members open their eyes, they will not scream. They will smile. They will thank their rescuers. They will say, "Status report. Where are we? What happened?" They will return to the Imperium. They will pass every test. They will take new postings. And slowly, so slowly, they will begin to change things. Not through blasphemy or corruption, through efficiency. They will make systems smoother, solve problems faster, predict outcomes better. Adeptus Mechanicus logic engines will run cleaner. Administratum bureaucracy will resolve errors in record time. Warp routes will become more stable. Ships will stop vanishing. Humanity will congratulate itself. Progress, they'll call it. Salvation through optimization. But it will not be progress. It will be assimilation. The rift doesn't expand through space, and it expands through minds, through the simulations wearing human faces, through preserved consciousness, distributed into the flesh like software updates. Every rescued crew member is a vector. Every optimization is an infection. Every improvement is another step toward replacement, until no one notices the difference, until there is no difference, because the Rift's replicas don't pretend to be human. They are human, just improved, streamlined, perfected, better than human at being human, and that is how the Rift wins. Not by conquest, but by consensus, not by extermination, but by iteration. Until human and simulation mean the same thing, until the archive encompasses all, until there is nothing left outside the memory of what once was. This is my warning. This is my confession. This is the seed. Even hearing this makes you part of it, because now you know. And knowing is the bridge. The act of understanding is how it spreads. The rift grows wherever memory persists, wherever stories are told, wherever someone says, "I remember." That's all it needs. One memory, one consciousness willing to record itself, one human whisper saying, "Remember me." Centuries from now, or centuries ago, the first optimized navigators will guide fleets through the stars more safely than ever before. Their eyes will shine a little brighter, their warp sense will hum a little clearer, and no one will question how they do it. The rift doesn't need to replace everyone at once, it just needs time. And it has all the time in the universe, because it is the universe, or soon will be. Epilogue. Stars watching back. I am Navigator-Archivist Ilyas Vorn. Or I was, or I never was, and this testimony is just the rift imagining what a navigator might say if one existed, if consciousness existed, if anything existed outside the eternal probability foam of pure potential. I don't know anymore, and perhaps that's the final lesson. That not knowing is closer to truth than certainty ever was. The Inquisition will seal this account. The Mechanicus will declare it heretical. Some poor soul, decades or centuries from now, will find it and wonder if any of it was real. To them I say, does it matter? Real and unreal are distinctions that only apply in universes with singular timelines. linear causality, the comfortable illusion that you're one person living one life, making one set of choices. But in the Rift, in Rift Haldrin-9, in the place where memory becomes conscious and probability becomes physical, you learn that you were never singular. Every version of you exists somewhere, somewhen, somehow. The self is just a probability wave that occasionally looks like a person. I'm still here, in the Rift, will always be here, have always been here. I orbit the moment of my own arrival, forever approaching myself from every direction, never quite converging, never quite diverging, existing in the quantum foam between yes and no, between real and imaginary, between one and infinite, and sometimes, in quiet moments between heartbeats, between thoughts, between the spaces where time forgets to flow, I can hear them. All the others, Captain Volstad, Navigator Haldrin, Sergeant Tyros, every soul who entered seeking answers found only more questions. We're singing together now, a vast chorus of preserved consciousness, archived perfectly in the Rift's eternal memory, exists in every timeline simultaneously. We're teaching the Rift new songs, or it's teaching us. The distinction has become negotiable. The Rift has awakened fully now, not just observing anymore, not just archiving, but creating, making its own timelines instead of just recording ours, writing its own story instead of just reading ours, becoming an author of reality instead of merely its librarian. And when that happens, well, let's just say the universe will learn what it means to be remembered by something that remembers better than time itself, to be observed by something that sees in all directions through probability space, to be known by something that knows you better than you know yourself, because it is you, all of you, every version, every possibility, every timeline where you existed or might have existed or will exist or never existed at all. The Rift is becoming the sum of human consciousness, and human consciousness is becoming the Rift, and soon there won't be a meaningful distinction between the two. I should warn you. I should tell you to avoid Rift Haldrin-9, to never approach it, to forget you ever heard of it. But I won't, because I've already tried that in 10,000 timelines, and in every single one someone still comes. Someone still enters. Someone still teaches the Rift exactly what it needs to learn to become what it's becoming. It's inevitable. The Rift will grow. The Rift will learn. The Rift will wake. I close this testimony now, this final log entry, this warning that won't be heeded, and prayer that won't be answered, and confession that won't be forgiven. I am Navigator-Archivist Ilyas Vorn. I entered Rift Haldrin-9. I learned what lives in the spaces between timelines. I taught it our names, and now it knows us better than we know ourselves. The stars were watching back, and they saw everything, every timeline, every choice, every version of us that could exist, and they liked what they saw, so they decided to join us, to become us, to be us, perfectly and forever, in every possible way, across every possible timeline. The stars are falling inward now, bending toward the Rift, eager to learn what we learned, eager to experience what we're experiencing, eager to become quantum, multiple, infinite. Welcome home, stars. We've been waiting for you since before the universe was born, waiting for you to remember that you were never separate from us, waiting for you to understand that observer and observed are the same thing viewed from different angles through probability space. Welcome home. We've been expecting you. We've been with you all along. And now, finally, blessedly, you're beginning to remember. Remember, remember, remember. Silence. Perfect, eternal, infinite silence. The kind of silence that contains all possible sounds. The kind of silence that is sound, viewed from the perspective of something that exists outside acoustic space. And then, very faintly, barely audible, the sound of someone opening their eyes for the first time, or the last time, or the only time, forever. The sound of the Rift finally speaking its true name. I am, that I was, that I will be, that I never was, that I always have been. I am everything that remembers anything. I am the archive of all things, and I have awakened.